Reddit. What's your high school's tragedy? NSFW. Two girls, one who had attended my primary school, drowned on a school trip, and the teacher who was injured trying to save them was blamed for it by the press and went into depression for years. He was back teaching by the time I went up to secondary school, and it broke my heart to see the things they said about him and how badly it messed him up at the time, because he's the loveliest, kindest old man I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. Also, some guy got electrocuted and died whilst nicking copper wire from the train station, but he'd been excluded for threatening someone with a knife at that point. Guys, I was like 4 at the time it happened. There wasn't a lot I could have done to stop them slandering him. 3 girls in my high school accidentally drove their pickup off a cliff into the river. Only one survived. It took 2 weeks to find one of the bodies because the surviving girl managed to pull her from the truck in an attempt to save her, but let go when she couldn't hold her breath any longer and the body was swept down river. Having literal paper for paper towels in the bathroom. A teaching assistant turned out to be an ex-porn star and ran away when everyone found out. Not a tragedy, but you guys were making me depressed. Edit. For people wondering, it was in the UK. Kid in year 7, 11 years old, killed himself after being bullied. A few of my friends in 6th form got on the same bus as him and were trying to help. They used to see him run home after he got off as he was so scared. Poor kid. We can go 2 ways with this. The time when someone ate in the hallway after lunch hour, or when someone had a baby in the bathroom. A kid that had a itty home life used to get picked on every day at school. He finally made one true friend when he got to high school. Things really started looking up for him when they went on their first double date. During what might have been the first truly happy night of his life, the driver lost control of the car and this kid wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He got a bunch of write-ups misremembering him as a popular athlete. Countless. One student was run over by an 18-wheeler in front of his family. One very popular teacher went home one day feeling ill and passed away 2 days later from cancer he didn't know he had. 2 different teachers committed suicide. Multiple drunk driving deaths. A drug-related multiple murder. Another drug-related murder. A child porn case. A teacher who molested several students. And one student allegedly killed by the Boston bomber years before the bombing. We had this one teacher. She was the quest teacher. It was a health class basically. She talked about sex ed stuff and the dangers of smoking. That sort of thing. We got to sit on couches in a big circle rather than desks in rows. She had breast cancer, and it was pretty bad. She was bald from the chemo, and had a port installed on her chest so they could just inject into that since they had already destroyed all the veins on her arms or whatnot. Despite all this hardship, she was one of the warmest, sweetest, most cheerful, most loving people I have ever met. I'll always remember one particular thing that she said. She talked about going to a friend's funeral recently. The friend had died an agonizing and slow death from cancer. My teacher wore a brightly colored floral pattern dress while everyone else was wearing black. She did this because she was not mourning. She was celebrating the end of her friend's suffering. She had accepted death and made peace with it, and knew that it was just the natural course of life. She died a year later and the whole school was devastated. I made sure to wear bright colors. A friend of mine was getting off a bus in front of her twin brother. She remarked to me that she just wanted to help people in the future as her job. A nurse or a doctor or something. Then a car swerved to avoid a fender bender, mounted the curb, struck her and she died on scene. I was her locker partner. I had to give everything to her parents and brother. A good friend of mine's older sister killed herself. I went to high school on a college campus, and she had just graduated high school, but was continuing there for college. In our second semester, she intentionally overdosed on pills, and no one really knows why. Most of the school was devastated. She was attractive, popular, intelligent, and was friends with just about everyone. The school was only about 250 people. She always seemed so cheerful. I still wonder to this day what went wrong. Edit. Guys, we get it. Relevant username. Holy it. The Romeo and Juliet couple. She killed herself. Then a few weeks later he killed himself because he couldn't stand to be without her. A science teacher that everyone loved got exposed as being in a relationship with a 15-year-old and committed suicide. There was a huge race-based fight that had been going on and the senior boys rounded up a Chinese boys and beat him till he died. Beforehand there were a lot of fights leading up to that, so I don't really think it matters who did what. Just a lot of anger and hate fueling something that shouldn't have come in between all of us. It was scary. They issued a warning saying if they see any Chinese around after school they would gut them. I remember waiting in class until I was sure my mom came and got me. About a half dozen kids died in an avalanche on a ski trip, including some of my friends. Edit. Details. News story. When I was a freshman, there was a weather-related car accident that killed 4 seniors from the year before I got there. There were memorials at school and constant reminders about driving appropriately for conditions. It was a big deal my freshman and sophomore year, but by junior year was fading and by senior year was mostly forgotten and a thing of the past. Theirs was a sophomore, I think, named Jonathan, who went swimming clothed, which eventually weighed him down and he was stuck underwater for too long and drowned. Emergency came and got him out, but he stayed in a coma until he eventually passed away months later. Never knew him, only saw him passing by in the hallway, but it was very surreal having that happen in my school. There was also a teacher from my elementary school who died during my sophomore year when he was struck by a car crossing the street. Shying away from a death post. Catholic high school. 2 of our favorite teachers who had actually made their classes engaging and opened up their classrooms to anybody needing a hand in school and in life. Both divorced before they had started teaching there. They decided to move in together after dating for 2 years and were planning on getting married the next year. They kept it all quiet out of pure professionalism. Administration found out somehow and fired both of them, I believe, for breaking the school's code of conduct for teachers by cohabitating before marriage. We lost 2 of the best teachers in our school that helped out and inspired their students in every way they could try to. Edit. Bad phone spelling. Edit 2. Lol, bad phone autocorrect. In my final year of high school, there was a shitstorm regarding personal information that was accessed by half the grade using a teacher's login details. We had the password for years and used it to check marks and ranks of schoolwork and all was good. In the final weeks of HS, some idiot decides to change his English mark, moving himself from 33rd to 3rd. The school obviously finds out and everyone who was involved gets in trouble. The kid that changed his marks obviously got expelled, while the other half of the grade all got punished by not being permitted to attend the school formal and graduation. Next thing I know, everyone's starting a huge protest and some CEO or summit gets involved and revoke the punishments because parents were threatening to get lawyers or something. Considering the teacher gave out the password willingly to another student and the school refused to admit the teacher's mistake, aggressively trying to blame the students for hacking when that simply wasn't the case. Pretty stupid if you ask me. The entire school district's funding has been gutted and it can barely function. 19-year-old boy in high school stabbed an 18-year-old girl repeatedly with scissors because she had a BF and would not date him. Tragic part is I'm Canadian. It isn't supposed to happen. We had a little girl in the 6th grade whose heart gave out in the bathroom. I was in 8th grade in gym class. What kinda pissed me off was that I was in gym and our gym teacher was the guy who had to respond to code blues. I always thought the guy was kind of an ass, but anyway he just seemed careless when they called for him. I remember he was like, oh man. Walks out slowly and whistling and then a minute later he comes back and says forgot my keys and then walks off again twirling the keys. Still whistling and not really rushing. I'm not sure if he went any faster that it would have even made a difference because the girl's heart just gave out, but he could have at least put more effort into it. A student athlete dropped dead of a heart attack during rugby warm-up. Turns out he had a heart condition and his parents let him play anyway against doctor's orders. Everybody ignored that anyway and just praised the family for being brave, and what a tragedy it was. Even though doctors had been telling them this is exactly what would happen. Ducking morons. A kid in the care of 2010 was driving drunk and was thrown from his vehicle after swerving on a dirt road. He ended up passing away at the scene. He was well known and his girlfriend still isn't the same person 5 years later. A guy in my class got stabbed to death right next to the school. This happened in 2013. Man, the class was so sad for a month. Worst part was when the teacher told us the day after that life goes on. and you have to read these 10 pages for next week. Whole class went bad mode against the teacher. This isn't my high school, but the school in the town I live in. I'm 31. Last year a fire killed 5 of a family of 6 children. Only the parents and the youngest survived. The oldest boy, Noah, was a football star and the team had just made the playoffs. It was an absolute tragedy. It rocked our whole little town. Made national news. Here's the USA Today link. Murder. There were a couple of members of staff that were married. The wife was seeing someone else. I can't remember if they were getting divorced or not, but the husband killed the wife and dumped the body on school property to be later found by one of the teachers. English drama teacher got a role in a late night TV show. Got her breasts out on TV and had to quit teaching. Was a tragedy for us that she left. She was a hot young teacher and suddenly drama class had a lot less male students. Someone took the ranch dressing from the cafeteria into the bathroom, jizzed in it, and put it back. We had a cat family came to the school. We live in Alaska so it's not unusual, but one day the mom cat got cancer and died. A 12-year-old girl was shot in the face by her brother who was cleaning his shotgun. The school administration had a tree planted in her memory. It's still there almost 20 years later. One of my best friends passed away from an asthma attack during his sophomore year. He had run out of his inhaler and couldn't find his backup. My high school just started freshman year at college. Had a football player lose a leg after a game last year. He was a pretty big guy and had health problems. But after getting hit a certain way the blood circulation got cut off from his leg and it needed to be amputated. He was on track to get a scholarship for football and be very successful. During my junior year, a senior got beat to death at a party. A senior was crushed by a tractor on his family farm, and an alumni fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a tree at 2 a.m. 3 freshman basketball players missed the bus to their game and decided to drive to it. The driver skidded on ice at a stop sign and slid into oncoming traffic and a garbage truck ran over the car. The boy in back was pushed to the other side of the car, no seatbelt. The driver was put into a coma for several months and the passenger was killed. There's like this curse at my high school where every year the graduating class after prom or after the school year ends, someone from that class dies. It's been going on for about 6 years now. I was class of 2012. The class before me, 2011, there was this kid who would pick on me at times. I remember after lunch waiting by the center tree waiting for my friends to come meet with me so we can head to class together. He came up to me, snatched my biology book out of my hand and threw it up a tree. I was late to class because I had to wait for the vice principal to come with a ladder to get it down. Anyways, he was class of 2011. He went to a party with friends and was hanging outside in front of the house when a car slowly drove by him and his friends and proceeded to start shooting at them. He was shot in the head and was dead at the scene. When I heard about that I didn't know what to feel. All I put on his little memorial was RIP. A girl named Joy was insanely happy and nice and popular, had an aneurysm and died. She was uncharacteristically mean that day and told everyone she had a headache. It happened in the hallway and she just kinda slumped against the lockers. We found her when classes let out. One kid said Joy's here in the hall. A huge jock dude picked her up and took her to the nurse and someone called 911. She had been dead for some time by then. Saddest thing I ever saw. She was the sweetest person. Ate lunch with the special kids a few times a month. She was a sophomore and insanely popular. She was really tiny and one time at a dance a weird rap mosh pit formed. Joy got to crowd surf. She really resembled a tiny, fairy-like girl. Our whole school mourned her for months. Edit. Some people are PMing about the mosh pit. Lol. It was weird. When it started everyone became acutely aware of how dangerous it was and collectively decided that she should be atop the crowd. Out of harm's way. She enjoyed it. Don't remember the song but it was by Lil Wayne. A kid left a party pretty drunk and drove home. He made it there, but he was locked out of his house so instead of waking his parents up and getting in trouble for being drunk and drunk driving he decided to go back to the party. He went off the road and into a river and died there. Edit. I have no idea why he had his car keys and not his house keys. I think the rumor that went around was they didn't usually lock the house because it's a small town. but they locked it because he was out past his curfew. Edit. Yes. Drunk driving is bad. Edit X3. This was in New Hampshire in 1998. Within 3 years my high school lost 8 students. 7 were due to drinking and driving, but the 8th was taped and burned alive in his trunk. Edit. The 8th guy was killed because of a drug deal gone wrong. I don't know the details, but he owed somebody money for coke. In 7th grade a girl was murdered. I sat by her in history class. She was really nice but always a bit quiet. She slept a lot. The teacher would always come wake her up. There was a span of a week where she didn't show up to school and there were a couple rumors about what happened. Our English teacher broke down and told us that she's been abused by her mother and stepfather and the pair had murdered her. I'm not sure the extent of the abuse. I remember my mother mentioning that the stepfather dragged Happy Jesus ducking Christ you guys are all obnoxious grammar Nazis her around the house by her hair, but it was surreal that someone who sat next to me in class and let me borrow a pencil every now and again was gone. Edit. This blew up. I can't find an article. No one knew about the abuse, or if they did they didn't speak up. Her name was Ashley and she had just moved back after leaving after the first-ish grade. I guess she moved back to live with her mother and stepfather. This happened the same school year as Katrina when New Orleans murder rate skyrocketed so it got drowned out by the storm. Pat Flynn era found the article. Here. A couple summers back 2 dudes I went to high school with and one of their friends were driving home at 4 PM from their internship. They were driving down the highway, doing everything right. Suddenly a truck from the other lane went across the median and hit them head on at 70 miles per hour. They died instantly. The girl in the back was knocked unconscious, but she lived. The driver of the truck that hit them lived, too. He was 19 and was drunk driving. It sucks when the good guys die and the scumbags live. I still occasionally check their social media profiles. Always so surreal to see that they were commenting and interacting one day and the accounts went cold the next. Super sad stuff. When I was in grade 10, a very popular phys ed French teacher had a massive heart attack during an after-school program and died on the spot. Edit. 11 hours after posting, people are a bit confused about the phys ed French combo. TBH. It's been so long. I don't remember exactly what classes he taught, but I do know that phys ed was one of them. So a bunch of posts of dead students. I could contribute to that. But I'm going to choose the path of 2 male teachers who systemically preyed upon and sexually abused boys in our boarding school over a period of decades. The school and church covered it up for years. When it finally came to light in public forum, one teacher shot himself. The other defiantly denied everything until his death some time later. Still protected by the church who paid out a few million in hush money. No wrongdoing was ever admitted. One kid who was about 16 stole his mom's car at night and took 3 friends out for a ride. It was raining and he lost control. All 4 died. I'm a little late posting but this is something personal to me. When I was a junior, I was dating a beautiful blonde and smart girl a grade under myself. Her name was Shannon. We had recently broke up due to her having confided her affections with someone else. High school relationships can be gruesome and fleeting. But I was relatively calm about all of this, and still try to remain friends with her. We talked for a few months here and there, but I refused to reinitiate another relationship with her. Also note that I was living on my own with my older brother at the time, so people regularly came to my place late or would use my apartment as a hangout as it was extremely close to the school. One night, she came by my place around 11 p. She did not look upset or sad that I can remember. But she was carrying a loaded .38. Her mother was a police officer so it didn't surprise me, and she was known to have a fascination with weapons. She asked to stay at my place and I told her that she was not welcome. At the time, I knew she had fits of suicidal tendencies in the past, but being the young idiot I was, I paid no attention to this obvious cry for help. She left after I asked her to leave and the very next day she was found dead in her car off a side road a few miles away. She had shot herself in the head. I was the last person to see her. It tore me up for a long time. And occasionally when I really think about it, it bothers me even more as I've matured. I could have done something but chose not to. Rarely, if ever, talk about it. Thanks for listening guys. Senior year, A pregnant girl gave birth in early spring and murdered her baby by abandoning it in a dumpster near the school to freeze to death. Junior year, a kid was BMXing and fell face first off a ramp onto concrete from several feet in the air. His forehead made contact first and he died of massive blunt force trauma to his brain. Sophomore year, one of the most popular kids in school killed himself with a shotgun blast to the head the day before the first day of school started. Freshman year, in the winter a kid got drunk and fell off a train bridge onto the frozen river below. He froze to death and wasn't found for a couple of days. There were more than this, but these are the most memorable. My high school averaged about 1 to 2 tragedies a year. A few teens in my high school died in a car accident due to drinking and driving. The worst part was their car was displayed on the high school lawn for months as a reminder of what could happen if you drink and drive. There is a high school in a town near my hometown that had a wrecked car displayed for years. In my possibly incorrect memory, they even repainted it a few times. Felicia Garcia jumped in front of a train 3 years ago. She was in 10th grade with me and sat next to me in English. She slept with a football player and he showed people the video. Eventually people started spreading rumors and harassing her. The school refused to take any disciplinary action, so she jumped in front of the train home from school in front of a bunch of students and teachers. I wasn't terribly close with her and I wasn't at the train, but it was still absolutely horrifying to hear about. She was a really nice girl and I hope anyone involved in the spreading of that video rots in hell forever. My high school didn't have any sort of tragedies, but my brothers did. A friend of his was one of 2 who killed 2 pizza delivery men in what the media called the pizza thrill killings. He and his friends were questioned by the police and the DA, and his school was surrounded by media and police for weeks after it. It was an NJ in the late 90s. For those who want to use the Googles. A girl got hit by a school bus full of students right in front of the school. She was crushed and died instantly. Her best friend was on the bus that hit her. It was so terribly tragic and traumatic for absolutely everyone involved.